Yes, good afternoon, everyone. I hope you all have learned what all I have taught you till date. Yes. So basically, this is a session where I'm going to take certain important things, and I want all of you to understand that, right? These things are very, very important. Very important, correct. Right? So let's just go ahead. Let's just let's just try to understand that how we are going to discuss the bar graphs. Okay, so before I go ahead, let me just minimize everything and let me just you know make you through with the basics of bar graph, right? So what we have to keep in our mind is that definitely bar graphs, they seems easy like line graphs and pie charts, but line graphs and pie charts, they have got certain vocabulary, and the same vocabulary, proportions, fractions are used in bar graphs as well. But what you have to keep in your mind is that with the bar graphs, you should be able to identify all the same things which you were able to do with the line graphs and pie charts as well, right? Now here the trick is, basic trick is, whatever you think is applicable to the bar graphs, is it actually making sense? Is it actually the relevant information, the kind of what do you say, the important features or the significant feature? This is what we have to understand. Okay, so let's go ahead. Now this is the code. This is what you have to keep in your mind is that, yeah, I'll just highlight this. If you use this code, right, so you'll get a discount of 10% on all the courses at Unacademy. So my course is going to start from 4th of November. You all can learn there with the right mindset, with the right attitude, and I'll make sure that you learn to the maximum. At the end of the day, if you do the hard work, nobody can stop you from getting results, that's for sure. Okay, now let's go ahead and let's just understand bar graphs. So we'll do the analysis of bar graphs, then we'll do certain examples. And I always say, I strongly believe in the line, get the band you need, because if you really work hard, you can definitely get the band that is required. There is no stopping there. You can only get the band you need provided you are doing hard work in the right direction. Your strategy is right. Because just by learning the English, doing the practice without the right strategy will never fetch you results. Results only come when you work on your basics, when you practice on your basics, when you are thorough with your theory, and now you are using that theory to practice the task, and that too within the timelines. For example, in the IELTS listening, you should be able to complete anyway. You have to complete the task, all the 4 tasks in 40 minutes. For the IELTS reading, you should be able to complete answering 3 passages in 1 hour. For the IELTS writing, you should be able to complete an essay, writing an essay, planning as well as proofreading or checking in 40 minutes. For the IELTS writing task 1, that is either letter or graphs, you should be able to complete it in 20 minutes with minimum at least 150 words. And for the IELTS speaking or task 3, task 1, all the answers you should be able to complete in 1 minute. For the task 2, anyway, you have to complete within speaking within 2 minutes. For the task 3, you should be able to, at least speak for 2 minutes or kind of 1.5. The idea is that Only theory will not serve the purpose. Only practice will not serve the purpose. When you combine the theory, there is a theory for reading, there is a theory for, you know, listening, there is a theory for speaking, and then there is a theory for writing as well. So you should be able to learn those templates. That is the most important thing. So what you have to keep in your mind is that whenever you are about to start a new task, if even if you have done with the theory, right, even if you have done with the theory, so it is like that, only theory and the practice, and that to the practice within time. Will it fetch you results? It could fetch you results, provided you do it with your grammar and vocabulary as well. That is what we call 360-degree learning, 360-degree preparation. So here with my learners, I do 360-degree preparation, 360-degree training, without which you will not feel confident. If you really want to feel confident on your exam day, on your speaking day, your mind has to learn that these basic things were required, and I, being the mind of some XYZ Mr. or Miss, have learned everything. That is where class, that confidence, that, inner, what do you say, that exuberance on the face, that comes. Because, I mean, I know everything. There is nothing that I can get stuck for. There is nothing that I won't be able to speak. That is the idea. Okay, now let's go ahead quickly. Class timings for IELTS academic writing task 1, you all have to keep in your mind. You have to read the prompt, you have to plan the essay or the report writing in 3 to 5 minutes for sure. So either you call it, this is not an essay, but we are calling it an essay in the sense that we are writing something. Although it's a report writing, but then again it has got 4 paragraphs, so it's not necessarily officially formulates that essay. So read the prompt, plan the essay, take it 3 to 5 minutes. Then writing is basically, 10 to 15 minutes. So when it is 10 to 15 minutes, then yes, if I have taken this much time, I know that how I have to bifurcate. Then editing, proofreading or checking your report writing, that's 3 to 5 minutes. This is something you have to keep in your mind. So if you have taken 3, total time is 20 minutes. So obviously if you have taken 3, then you will take 17 minutes in writing. So there is no time left for the proofreading or the editing. There won't be any time. So what you will be doing is that you will be actually, if you have divided for 3, then let's make it kind of 15 or 14. And then 3 for the proofreading. So in case of, if you have chosen 3, it will be 14. 3, 14, 3. If you have chosen 5, it is 5, 15. No, 5, it won't work like this. If you have taken full 5 minutes here, and even if you want to give 5 minutes for the proofreading, then only you will get 10 minutes for the writing. So 10 minutes for writing class, I think that will be a little low. I don't approve that formula so much. Maybe what you can do is that you can choose somewhere around, 4, even 4 is I think too much. 3 minutes for the planning, that's okay. 3 minutes for the planning. Then, 14 minutes for the writing, that is still we can do, we can manage. And then 3 minutes for the editing. Even 3 minutes for the editing, if you think it's too much, you take 15 minutes for writing and 2 minutes for editing and proofreading. So that is 3 plus 15 plus 2. So class, it's not necessary that these things have already been decided. It's not like that. These things you can decide on the spot, provided somebody should be there who could tell you that you have to divide your report into 3 parts. That is planning, then writing, then proofreading. That's it. This is what you have to keep in your mind, and rest you can customize it. If 5 10, 5 doesn't suit you, you can definitely customize this. There is no second thought to it. Next. Now, class 2 hit a high score. You have to demonstrate your skills elegantly. Some ways to do so are: your writing must showcase appropriate synonyms. आपकी writing में proper synonyms होने चाहिए. Inappropriate use of synonym word. जो भी किसी भी synonym word का अगर inappropriate use होगा वो थोड़ा सा costly होगा. It might be very costly. You have to skillfully use a wide range of vocabulary. So that means point number one, what I have to keep in my mind is that I should be using a lot of synonyms. Okay, fine. Then, if I have used a lot of synonyms, then what if I have used an incorrect synonym? It's not necessarily, class, that you always know the right kind of synonyms. Maybe you have used a synonym and you might end up using a wrong synonym. What then? That means you should have a wide range of vocabulary. So in my live sessions, I always work on a lot of vocabulary as well. Not only in speaking but in writing as well. So you know you have a varied range of vocabulary. So when you will be paraphrasing or you will be doing synonyms, you have a ready-made repertoire of words of languages that could come handy to you in the IELTS writing task 1, in the IELTS writing task 2, as well as in speaking task 1, 2, 3 class. It's not just only for writing, right? Next. You have to avoid repeating words and phrases used in the question paper. Here you have to paraphrase skillfully. Yani, you don't have to basically repeat words and phrases. Whatever is used in the question, that means if anything has come in the question class, be it IELTS writing task 2, be it IELTS writing task 1, be it speaking task 1, task 2, you have to avoid repeating them. You have to avoid repeating those words and phrases. उनकी कोई ज़रूरत नहीं है. Because that means we'll end up getting a low band score. अगर हमने थोड़ा सा questions में से words उठाए and then we thought कि नहीं थोड़े से लिए हैं, let it be. No, it's not let it be, class. You have to avoid taking words from the question. You have to paraphrase them skillfully. Then you should avoid using two common words. It should be wise to use good synonyms. So don't use, two common words which everybody know. Two, common, that is kind of cliche. Although anyway cliches are not allowed in formal writing, but don't use two common words. Rather, instead use good synonyms. Very good synonyms. Because synonyms still work, but two common words don't work. So what is the idea? You have to use uncommon words, class. You have to use uncommon words. Okay. Now, what actually the examiner looks for assessing your writing? When the examiner is actually assessing your writing, what actually the examiner is looking for? The examiner will mainly look for your range of vocabulary and how wisely you have used them. Whatever your range of vocabulary is there, no? And how wisely you have used them. So basically, point number one, he'll be looking for your range of vocabulary, right? And how wisely you have used them. That is the first and the foremost point that the examiner will be looking for. What else? The accuracy of your reporting or the presentation by picking and choosing the most important information in the given material. जो भी आपकी रिपोर्टिंग है या जो भी आपकी प्रेजेंटेशन है उसकी एक्यूरेसी क्या है? Have you, picked the most important information in the whatever visual information given to you, in the data, in the factual representation, or anything in the form of graph or table has been given to you? Are you able to pick that significant information in the given material, the most important information? So accuracy of your reporting or the presentation by picking and choosing the most important information, whether there is any misinterpretation or misconception in reading and explaining the trend. क्या कोई misinterpretation या misconception हुआ है in reading and explaining the trend? So that means if you have described any trend, is there any kind of misinterpretation or misconception? Is it so? And explaining the trend as well. So what has happened? If obviously it is not there, you will get a good score. But if it is there, if you are unable to pick the most important information, if you are unable, even if you have expressed your trend, you have not done the act, you have not looked for the accuracy. You have actually misinterpreted or there is some sort of misconception in reading and explaining that trend, that whatever you are looking, whatever you are explaining, that's not you are actually trying to say. So these kind of things are also there. What is your expertise in organizing the paragraphs and logical sequencing of given data? What is your expertise? How much is your expertise in organizing the paragraph? Because in a paragraph you have to use a lot of linking words, you have to use a language which is actually related to IELTS writing task 1, like accounted for, plummeted, soared, surge, a lot of things, no? So is it like that? What is your expertise? How you have proved your expertise? How you have logically sequenced the data? That initially it's introduction, then it's overview, then it's body paragraph 1, body paragraph 2. What about what will go in the body paragraph 1? What will go in the body paragraph 2? And lastly, your overall fluency and clarity of your presentation. Whatever fluency, whatever clarity you have of your presentation, do you have that? Do you really think that whatever I have written, it's actually making sense and it's fluent, it's clear? That matters. Okay. Then anyway, as I always say, class, in the writing task, you will be judged on the 4 criteria in the IELTS writing task 2 as well as in the IELTS writing task 1. That is task achievement, coherence and cohesion, lexical resources, grammatical range and accuracy. So these are the 4 areas which you have to look for. So 25% for the task achievement, that is, are you able to answer the question properly or not? Coherence and cohesion, that is there is a logical flow? Is there a logical flow between the paragraphs, between the sentences? That is cohesion, cohesive. And then there is a kind of cohesion, some cohesive devices, that is logical connectors. Coherence, whatever I have written, am I able to, make sense out of it? Is it making sense? Lexical resource. What do you mean by lexical resource? Lexical resource means it's some sort of vocabulary, that is not just vocabulary, collocations, phrasal verbs, idioms, they all come under lexical resources. And especially whether you have used some uncommon words or not. Then grammatical range and accuracy. So what do you mean by grammatical range? Am I able to use all the, grammar, your basically past tense, modals, conditionals, active, passive? Am I able to use that? That is what I call grammatical range and accuracy, right? Moving further, let's understand in detail now these 4 criteria. Task achievement. The answer should provide a paraphrased question to begin with, followed by an overview that gives the reader key information. Now class, this you already know, that the answer should provide a paraphrased question. So that means that whatever answer I have written, it should have that paraphrased question. And if I begin with, it is followed by an overview. So you remember class, after introduction I used to write overview that gives the reader some sort of key information. That is task achievement. Am I able to present the question in the paraphrase format or not? That is task achievement. Next, coherence and cohesion. Is the answer divided into logical, clear and logical paragraph? And within the paragraph are all the lines are connected to, they have some sort of logical connection? Like first is connected to second, second is connected to third, third is connected to fourth. Third, lexical resource. I don't know how many of you understand the meaning of lexical, but lex is a root word for words, right? So it should be a evidence of paraphrasing. There should be an evidence of paraphrasing that you have done paraphrasing. Synonyms and some less common words. This you have to keep in your mind. Next, grammatical range and accuracy. What do I mean by grammatical range and accuracy? The answer should have no grammatical errors. There should be no grammatical errors. The sentences should mainly be made up of multiple clauses and have a variety of structure. They should be made up of multiple clauses and they should have a variety of structure. So what do I mean by that? No grammatical error. Everybody knows no error of tenses, modals, conditionals, verbs. But one most important thing in the GRA, that is the grammatical range and accuracy, is that it should have multiple clauses. It should have a variety of structures. Multiple clauses and variety of structures. What else? Now, people doing the academic text will write a report on a data set, map or process. People doing general training will write a letter. So everybody knows that for all those who are appearing for the academic part, they'll write a report on some data set, map or process. Whereas those who are going for the GT, that is the general training, they'll write a letter. And you must write 150 words or more. Now, you should spend around 20 minutes and I have already given the bifurcation of these 20 minutes. And 150 words I have told you till 190 it's okay. Don't go above 190 and don't go less than 150. If you go less than 150, you will get a big zero. That's all you have to keep in your mind. Next. Task 1 is worth 1/3 of your total marks on the writing test. Right? It is actually 1/3 of your total mark. So you'll be assessed in 4 areas. How you'll be assessed in 4 areas? Like task achievement, coherence, cohesion. You'll be judged here. Lexical resources, grammatical range and accuracy. And the most important thing is that you can demonstrate that you can clearly communicate in English. Class, this you have to keep in your mind. You have to demonstrate that you can clearly communicate in English. The key to doing well is to know exactly what the examiners want and giving it to them. That means, if I have just now stated these 4 criteria, but what is the purpose? Why these 4 criteria? Why I am being judged only on these? What is the purpose? The purpose is to actually see your abilities to communicate in English. That is all is required. And the key to doing well, what is the key to do well? To know exactly what the examiner wants. If you know exactly what the examiner wants and you give the same thing to the examiner, nobody can stop you from getting the desired band. That's for sure. Okay, let's go ahead. Next. Oh yes, common problems. So these are some of the common problems that you have to keep in your mind. Not knowing which information to include in your answer. Whatever. You definitely don't know which information you have to include. right? Being you are unaware what the examiner is expecting. Definitely, if you really don't know what the examiner is, expecting, then somewhere that's a loss for you. Nobody actually, there is no second thought to it, that you have to make sure that something which the examiner wants, you should give exactly the same thing. If you include opinions and you draw conclusions, class, that is also not a good point if you do like this. Why? What is the case? Because this is not some essay. Don't think that this is some essay. This is something which requires your test of your analytical abilities. It is something where you have to prove that you are able to select the most significant features and you are able to leave the insignificant features. That is what you have to keep in your mind, right? This is basically, that is important, because if you don't do somehow these particular things, then your thing won't be considered good. Include opinion and draw conclusions. No, that is not required. Not using an appropriate structure. What do I mean by this? Not using an appropriate structure. See, I mean to say that there is a structure which everybody has to follow. Like there is an introduction, right? There is overview. Then there is supporting paragraph 1. That is the body paragraph 1. Then there is supporting paragraph 2. That is actually the paragraph 4, but it's the supporting paragraph 4. So not using an appropriate structure. That is a common problem. What else? Now, not using appropriate grammar. If you are not using the appropriate structure, there is a possibility that you will not use appropriate grammar for describing data, trends, and making comparisons. Maybe you are not using a wide variety of appropriate vocabulary. Yeah, this could also be possible. Maybe you are not using a wide variety of appropriate vocabulary. You failed to write an effective overview. Maybe you failed to write an effective overview. You copy words and phrases from the question. You are simply copying it, copying the words and the phrases from the question. Then you are simply doing that. No, this is not allowed. You have to use a wide variety of vocabulary. That means you have to use uncommon question. You fail to write an effective overview. No, that will not actually give you the desired band. You know that you should know that overview, it should not include any kind of facts. Rather than facts, let me tell you statistics. Obviously, it will include facts, it will not include any kind of statistics, numbers. No, that kind of thing is not there. Should not be there. It has to be in the paragraph 3 or the paragraph 4. If you copy words and phrases from the question, what will happen? See, that means that will not showcase your ability to use synonyms, to use a wide variety of vocabulary, right? Next, failing to support description, trends, and comparisons with accurate data. If you fail to support descriptions, trends, and comparisons with accurate data, that will also not be good. Writing just one long paragraph, everything you have just clubbed into one paragraph, that is also not right. Then this is the main, you should call it, just a sec class, let me also check. So this is what you have to keep in your mind, that if somehow, okay, if somehow class you fail to follow this particular introduction, then that will also not be good. Why? Because if you fail to identify the main features, you fail to write the introduction where you have to paraphrase the question, right? Let me just highlight because this is very, very important. So you have to make sure that you paraphrase the question in the introduction. Then obviously you should be able to write the overview of first main feature and the overview of second main feature. So in the overview, you should know that sentence 1 is the overview of first main feature. Sentence 2 is the overview of the second main feature. Next, what about the line 3 or the sentence 3? You make general comparison. So this is kind of an optional line in the overview. If you do it, if you are fully confident, do it. If you are not fully confident, simply write 2 sentences in overview, stating the first main feature, stating the second main feature. Paragraph 3 has to be the details of significant feature 1. So now I am going to write my first most important feature. So in the sentence 1, I'll be writing the supporting details. In the sentence 2, I'll be again writing the second supporting point. And in sentence 3, I'll write the supporting detail, comparison details if appropriate. Getting my point? So supporting detail 1, supporting detail 2 for the first main feature. This is what you have to keep in your mind for the first main feature. What else? Details of significant feature 2. So now you have taken the second most important feature, right? And you should be able to write 2 supporting details related to that significant feature, the second significant feature. That will always be supporting detail 1, supporting detail 2, and the supporting detail or the comparison details if appropriate or if any is there. Supporting details or comparison details. Fine. You should be able to identify the main features. What do I mean by that? High or low values, erratic values, big increase or decrease. So this is very important class. Most of the people ask me, ma'am, what are main features exactly and how we can incorporate them into our report writing. What we can actually do to make them a part of our, kind of report writing, or it should become a regular part of our vocabulary. These are the main features class: high and low values, erratic values, biggest increase, wherever you say the biggest increase or the biggest decrease, volatile data, unchanging data, volatile data or the unchanging data, biggest majority or the biggest minority, that is kind of pie charts, biggest difference, biggest similarity, major trends, notable exceptions. These are very important class. Now the question that comes to your mind is, volatile data is that quickly, if it has actually risen to a certain extent, then it has remained there, and then finally, not finally, but in between also it has changed, increased, then stable, and then immediately it has dropped. Very volatile data. So this is what you have to keep in your mind. These are some of the main features, important features, significant features. Now let's understand the step-by-step instructions. Now read the question twice very carefully, class. This is the first step. Whenever you get the question, just try to read it twice very carefully. That's very important. Next, look at the data. What data is represented on the axis? What groups are represented? What time periods are shown? What are units of measurements? That means what data is represented on the axis. That definitely, when you look at x and the y axis, you become dead sure that okay, this is a data that has been represented here. These are the groups. What are the time periods? Obviously, time periods generally they will be on the x-axis. So what time period, what are the units of measurement? What are the main features? Can I make any kind of comparison? Or is there any exception that when this has increased, maybe this has actually dropped? Is there any kind of exception, comparison that I can do? Okay. Because class comparison, दो lines को दो bars को देख के comparison करना बहुत important है कि इन दोनों में comparison क्या है. So जितना important ये है कि आप significant trends और main features pick करें, उतना important ये भी है कि आप जो comparison है दो graphs के बीच में, दो visual representation के बीच में, आप वो comparison भी pick करें. Then make a quick plan using the above structure. Whatever structure you have seen, just make a quick plan. Write introduction by paraphrasing question. Whatever, paraphrasing based on that, write your introductory question. Write second paragraph, which is summary or overview of main features. Second paragraph. Okay. Support the ideas in second paragraph with more detail in third and fourth paragraph. Whatever second paragraph you are going to write, what is that? Summary or overview. So first paragraph we all know it's an introduction. Second paragraph is going to be an overview. Third, support the ideas in second paragraph with more detail. Whatever ideas you have, right? Write that in the second paragraph with more detail. So these two features will only go into overview, that is without numbers, but with numbers they'll go to paragraph 3 and paragraph 4. That's it. Make sure not to repeat words, use a range of vocabulary, check for any grammar mistakes, and make sure you should actually write at least 150 words. You can go till 190 as I always say, but don't go less than 150. There is no second thought to it. Now, let's look at the bar chart or the bar graph and let's try to understand. You always have to read the question twice. That's where you have to do the paraphrasing, right? That's where you all have to do the synonyms or changing the word order. This is what you have to keep in your mind. Now class, before I go into the bar graph, let me do a quick revision of what all I have done. Yesterday I did the line graph. Before that I did the tabular data, right? So in the tabular data you notice that there were number of factors like the percentage change in the source of funding for international students we did though. In that I showed you that whatever you have got the total or the percentage change in the total, that will go into the overview paragraph. But if you talk about your line graph, if what will go into the overview, that the overall trend, for example the initial value and the last value, but you're not going to write that value. So basically what kind of trend, if the last value is more than the initial value, then it was an increasing trend, and if the last value is lower than your initial value, that's a decreasing trend. Absolutely correct. What about the bar graph? What will go into the bar graph? In the bar graph overview, whatever trend you could see, that whatever the highest value, maybe the highest value, or maybe based on some comparison, some similar relevant data will go into overview, which right now you are not clear because I have only done line graphs and tables with you. Okay. Now, after the introduction, that is it comes the overview. So what will go into the overview? Yes. So in the overview, you are going to write about, in the overview, what you have to keep in your mind is that you have to write about the trends in case of, I just now told you, bar graph, we'll see. But after the overview, if we have to talk about the body paragraph 1 or actually the paragraph 3, what will go there? So there has to be some trends which you could club together, which you could group together. maybe if these two trends or if these two bars are increasing, then they'll come together. And what if the rest two bars, maybe the bars, the lines, or whatever is left, if they all are in the decreasing format, then you'll group the on the basis of increasing or decreasing. Point number one. Point number two, you could also group based on the years. That is also possible. Now, you should spend 20 minutes on this task. The chart shows components of GDP in the UK from 1992 to 2000. So I can clearly see that the chart shows components of GDP, okay, in the UK from 1992 to 2000. Now, if I look at it and then just try to visualize this data, I try to get hold of this data. So I can see that components of GDP, okay, in the UK. So that means gross domestic product. So they are talking about the component of gross domestic product in the UK. Okay, so the graph which I'm going to see, it will have, now start analyzing. This is how you have to analyze. The graph that I'm going to see, it will be having the GDP components in the UK from 1992 to 2000. Fine. Now, if I go ahead, if I simply look at the question, it has actually told me the main part there. Now, this part will remain common in all the IELTS writing task 1. This part will remain common. It is not going to change. Summarize the information by selecting and reporting the main features and make comparisons where relevant. So you have to write at least 150 words. You have to summarize the information. Okay, so this is the bar chart. You can see that gross domestic product from IT and service industry of the UK as a percentage of GDP. Okay, so you mean to say that GDP components are, or the GDP is from IT and service industry of the UK. Okay, so blue graph is representing IT industry, and the magenta or the kind of dark pink graph or the bar is actually representing service industry. Okay, so our duty is to fully analyze the graph, right? If planning is not there, then we won't be able to write. So it's starting from 1992 to 2000. Okay, and we can see that in 1992 it was somewhere at 6. So 6% as a percentage, because it's, although it's not written, but here it's written GDP from IT of the UK as a percentage of GDP. Okay, then the highest, what we can notice here is that class, the highest graph is this, if you notice here. Okay, so somewhere this has crossed the 14%, that is, it could be 15%. Okay, so what trend I could see? I could see from here to here it has increased, then a slight decrease, then increase, and then finally increase. So if I look here, the trend for IT is increasing, because if I look at initial value and I look at the last value, there is a huge difference. Okay, now what about the service industry? If I look at the service industry, it's gradually increasing. Is it so? It is kind of stable, slight increase, but still almost stable. It has shown an increase, it has again shown an increase. So whereas service industry is continuously increasing and the trend is also increasing. Okay, so here in this graph you have to decide what will go into the introduction, what will go into the overview, what will go in the paragraph 3, and what will go in the paragraph 4. So if I look here, this could be used, this particular thing could be used for paraphrasing. The graph illustrates, or the graph shows, gross domestic product from IT and service industry. So now if I go back and if I check components of GDP in UK, components of GDP. So that means, and if I look here, components of GDP, it's like the share of, the graph illustrates the share of IT and service industry, right, of UK as a percentage of GDP. I can also write like this. Now it is now this is done for the introduction. What about the overview? For the overview, I can say that the trend of the IT industry as a percentage of GDP is increasing, whereas the trend of service industry, so we are not going to write whereas, and also the trend, and the same trend is, we can see the same trend for service industry as well. Okay, what about the paragraph 3? So are you going to write IT industry in paragraph 3 and service industry in paragraph 4? Are you going to do like this? Or maybe if we look from here, that is 1994 to 1996, the trend for IT has decreased marginally or slightly, and even for the service industry it has increased slightly. This is what you have to keep in your mind. That I can clearly see that. Okay, now what else, class? Somewhere, is there anything that I'm missing out? Even if I check the values, let me clear it this way. Even if I check the values, class, let me just clear it. Okay, so now if I simply write the values, let me write the values. It's somewhere close to 6, right? So let me write here 6. This is somewhere close to 4. Then this is 8. And this is 6. This is somewhere less than 8, but let me mark it 8 as well. And this is, it's almost 7. Let's make it 7. This is 12. And this is, again, although it's 7.9, we can say, and I can't write 8, but let me make it 8. And this has crossed the barrier of 14, that is 15. Okay, and this is how much? This is 8. So is there any difference? Earlier, there is one thing we noticed here, class. Earlier the difference between them was less. You can see 648, 687, but after 1996, that is in 1998, the difference grew. Oh my god, even the difference becomes more in 2000, that is 12.8. Now it's 15.8. So the difference is really, it has increased over the period of time. Okay, so now I have understood the trend as well. Now I have understood the values as well. Is there anything that I am missing out here? Okay, so I think we are done. We are completely done with the graph. We have digested the graph to that extent that we cannot fail in writing the same. Okay, so let's just go ahead. Let's just try to analyze that, what we are going to write. So this is a question. It states that the chart shows components of GDP in the UK from 1992 to 2000. The bar chart. So instead of chart, I can write that the bar graph or the bar chart illustrates the gross domestic product generated from the IT and service industry. GDP, that is the gross domestic product generated from IT and service industry in the UK. Okay, so the bar graph or the bar chart illustrates the, what we have written, illustrates the gross. This is what we have taken from the graph rather than taking it from the question. It illustrates the gross domestic product from IT and service industry in the UK from, yeah, that is very important class. Somewhere when I was doing the paraphrasing with you, I forgot to tell you that it has to have this for or from. So from 1992 to 2000. It is measured in percentages. This is what it is written as a percentage of GDP. So it is measured in percentage. Overall, now if I talk about overall, it can be seen that, what could be seen? It can be seen that both increased as a percentage of GDP. Now it's the main thing. Point number 1 क्या show कर रहा है? वो हमने clearly वहाँ लिखा introduction में that it was showing this. Then actually here I have clubbed the overview with the introduction, so you could also do that. That is also possible, but if you don't want to do that, simply write that it can be seen that both increased as a percentage of GDP, but IT remained at a higher rate. Both have increased, right, as a percentage of GDP, but IT remained at a higher rate throughout this time. IT, if you look at IT, it remained at a higher rate, right, throughout this time. This is what you have to keep in your mind. Very easy class, simple, keep things in your mind. For the introduction, if you are unable to do the paraphrasing from the question, there must be some title written here. Simply rephrase that title for your introductory line. For the overview, I can clearly see two graphs because there is a clear-cut comparison. So overall trends, it can be seen that both IT and service industry increase as a percentage of GDP. However, IT remained at a higher rate throughout this time. If you look at IT, it remained at a higher rate throughout this time. Simple, very simple, nothing difficult class. I have made it easier as much as I could. Next. Now, the bar chart illustrates the GDP generated from the IT and the service industry in the UK. IT and service industry in the UK from 1992 to 2000, right? It is measured in percentages. It is measured in percentages. And overall, it can be seen that both increased as a percentage of GDP, but it remained at a higher rate throughout this time. Okay. At the beginning of the period in 1992, if you look at the beginning of the period, in 1992, the service industry accounted for 4% of GDP, right? Now, if I look here at the service industry, it is definitely accounting for 4%, whereas IT exceeded at just over 6%. So I started from my base year. Rather than dividing body paragraph 1 for IT, body paragraph 2 for service, I have divided it on the basis of years by stating that in 1992, the percentage, like the period, the service industry accounted for 4%. Service industry accounted for 4% of GDP, whereas it IT, it's not IT, this is IT, that is at 6, exceeded. So this language class, this vocabulary is important again and again. Why I am repeating that? Because even if you hear me, Even if you watch this lecture, you will still get some very good hold on IELTS Writing Task 1. At the beginning of the period in 1992, the service industry accounted for 4% of GDP, whereas IT industry exceeded this at just over 6%. Right? Over the next 4 years, that means 1992 to 1994 to 90, so over the next 4 years, the levels became more similar. Right? Levels are basically more similar, with both components standing between between 6 and 8. So assume it 8, assume it 6, assume it 8, and assume it 6. Over the next 4 years, the levels became more similar, with both components standing between 6 and just over 8%. That's it. So again, I have mentioned that even अगले 4 साल में, that means I have divided from 1992 to 1996, because after 1996 there is a huge gap between the two, or the huge gap started increasing between the two, no? So they are standing between 6 and just over 8%. IT was still higher overall. IT was still higher overall, though it dropped slightly. It dropped slightly from 1994 to 1996, though it dropped lightly from 90. If you look at 1994 to 1996, it has actually dropped. So overall, it has shown an increasing trend. It was still higher overall, though it dropped slightly from 1994 to 1996. This is what you have to keep in your mind. That's it. Nothing much, nothing difficult. In the first paragraph, I have divided 1992 to 1996. Now I am going to take 1996 to 2000. Okay. However, over the following 4 years, now again 1996 to 2000. So over the following 4 years, the patterns of the two components were noticeably different. If you look at the patterns, over the next 4 years, the patterns of the two components, wonderful way, patterns of the two components were noticeably different. The percentage of GDP from IT increased quite sharply to 12. The percentage of GDP from IT increased quite sharply to 12 in 1998. If you look here, it's 12 in 1998, and then nearly 15 in 2000. If you look here, it's 15 in 2000. Okay. While if you look at the service industry, stayed nearly the same, increasing to only 8. It has actually gone to 8, increasing only to 8. So over the next 4 years, you have written that, right? IT, they have remained almost same, but IT increased quite sharply to 12 in 1998, and then nearly to 15 in 2000. While the service industry stayed nearly the same, increasing to only 8%. See, it stayed nearly the same, increasing to only 8%. So even if you look here, so you have written however. Why you have written however? Because earlier you have explained, you have mentioned that IT, though it has dropped. Then you have written over the following 4 years, the patterns of the two components were noticeably different. The patterns were not same. The patterns were same till here. If I draw this line, right, if I let me just join this line. Okay, let me just rejoin this line. So basically I have divided my graph based on this factor. If I look at my graph, So I have divided my graph based on this factor that it's coming out to be, it's a divide between these two. From here till here, and now I'm going to describe. Obviously I'll be taking from 1996 to 2000, but then from here I am going to take that it's the pattern is noticeably different, because the percentage of GDP from the IT increased quite sharply, right? And it has sharply to 12. I can clearly see that. See, the transition is quite sharp. And then nearly 15 in 2000. While the service industry stayed nearly the same, increasing only to 8%. That's it. Then at the end of the period, the percentage of GDP from IT was almost twice. It is 8, and that's a very good line at the end. Percentage of GDP from IT almost twice that of the service industry. So 182 words. It's a band 9 answer. You always have to write like this. Okay. So the answer meets the requirement of the task. Introduction explains what the graph is about and gives an overview. Body paragraphs are ordered logically and clearly. First body paragraph discusses the first 3 years, where the patterns are fairly similar. This is contrasted in the second body paragraph, where GDP of each country diverges noticeably. Then there are a wide variety of sentence structures, and the language of change is correctly used. The correct tense is the past tense. Fine. At the end, as I always say, class, all the best to all of you. Just remember, success follows if you do the right thing in the right way at the right time. And don't forget to use this code SGTrainer748309 to get a 10% discount on all the courses on Unacademy. Okay, that's it. Fine. With this, I end the class. Right? Let's just make sure that everybody learns something from these sessions. That's it. Okay, and definitely I would like to meet you in my live classes, in my plus classes, where I'll be teaching all these concepts in more detail. Okay, that's all for today, class. Thank you so much.